welcome to Dear Katie, the podcast that amplifies courageous voices and real stories of resilience, healing, and hope after trauma. Inspired by the many letters Katie has received over the last 20 years, each week she interviews survivors, healers, and experts to honor their stories and explore the many paths to healing and hope. Before we begin, please know, many episodes of Dear Katie cover sensitive topics related to sexual violence, trauma, and recovery. Listen with care and take the space you need to take care of yourself. Your well-being is what matters most. Now, let's join Katie and today's guest for a conversation that matters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Dear Katie podcast. As you know, I am Katie Koestner, your host, and we are along for this long journey. I am so pleased to say we are well over 250 episodes. It is hard to believe we've really taken quite the ups and downs and sideways and backwards a little bit. I would say every single guest is giving us that full roller coaster ride experience with no life is a linear line, that's for sure, no matter what walk you end up on. For all of our listeners, I would just keep going with that journal. My goodness, I think everyone has so much to offer, and just, put it in buckets. Maybe it's the healing bucket, or the want to do this, or want to try this, or how I can take a break better, or how I can talk to someone else about what I'm going through better. Make categories. I think that's kind of a new idea I have for our next season, since we're now into season 10. So exciting. And as always, just take a break if you need to at any time. Self-care is the most important thing. Our guest today is an author and so many other talents. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jessica Teich. So Jessica won a national writing contest in high school, way back as a teenager. But she didn't start writing in earnest until she was forced to leave school because of a violent relationship with a much older man. She convinced her family to send her overseas and ended up living with a French family, though she didn't speak a single word of French. Jessica still carries with her the scraps of paper on which she began to tell her story, and those pieces of paper became the very foundation of the book we're going to talk about toward the end of the show. And like so many of us as survivors, Jessica never told anyone about the ongoing sexual assaults. Now, in this amazing memoir she has just come out with, is coming out with, she is going to recount the story of what happened to her. So we'll get to the book, but this is the real deal. Okay. Jessica's the real deal.
I gotcha.
So we might as well start with, so Jessica, you were in high school. Where did you get born, and where were you at that point?
I was born in Huntington, New York, which is the North Shore of Long Island. And that's where the ballet company was, where I was incredibly seriously involved. And
as a
that's
ballerina?
where I met this
like
man.
You were
as a ballerina.
Okay.
I was completely absorbed in that. And I think it further created this sense of marginalization, where I was already a bit of a loner, but I had this very different life from everybody in high school, because I went to class and rehearsal for hours and rehearsed at night. And so I couldn't really do a lot of the activities that people do in high school to connect with each other.
I got it. So, many of my childhood friends, my next door neighbors were into ice skating, and they were up at 4:30 in the morning every day, getting before high school even started to practice. Was that kind of the life of a ballerina as well?
Yeah,
like early
much.
Mornings, and then after school and.
Well, mostly after school and late into the evening, and you couldn't really do anything else. You couldn't horseback ride, because that was sort of contrary to the way they wanted your muscles to align. You couldn't see boys, you couldn't go to dances, you couldn't go to parties on the weekend. You were completely consumed by this life.
Wow. Okay. And when did you start? In elementary school?
I was little, like 4 or 5.
Okay. So that was your main thing. And did you choose
that,
or did your parents just say, this is the thing for you?
No, I chose it. And then even when I was very young, I would stick around after and sit on the floor and watch the head of the school choreograph. And I watched the interaction of the older dancers. Many of the women and men lived in this dance complex. And I saw behavior between the women and men that I didn't realize was sexual. I thought it was all related to dancing.
Oh.
So people grabbing each other, people bodies intertwined. And so I think when something started to happen to me and I was 16, I didn't really understand what was happening. And maybe like a lot of survivors, I was completely drawn into it and deep in it, if you will, before I kind of realized that it probably wasn't okay.
So it was like a coach or a fellow dancer,
It
or
was a fellow dancer. I was 16, he was 27, which at that moment is an enormous difference. And I'd never had any exposure to guys. So, and again, I was such a loner. I was I was a reader, and I felt very much like I lived on the margins of life for most high schoolers. So I was grateful for the recognition from him.
do you remember when you were 16 what sorts of things he was saying or doing when the relationship started?
I think because it was dance and it was a physical language, it was mostly physical. And I remember very vividly being in the studio with a lot of other dancers, women, girls really. And interestingly, I think in the ballet world, women are called girls, well into their late 20s, which is another form of oppression, I realize now. But I remember being in the studio and he came up to this group of girls. We were all 15 or 16, and he suddenly lifted me into the air and he slid me down his body, and I could feel that he was hard. Again, these are feelings I'd never had, no experience of. And that was sort of the moment that he started to lay claim to me. And because he and a lot of the older dancers lived in this house all together, and they were constantly in different permutations of relationships, he started to take me upstairs to his attic bedroom. And now, of course, I think many people must have known. And very much later, I learned that he had abused other girls in the dance studio, in the dance setting. But I didn't know any of that. And when I would see the older girls sitting on the steps of the dance studio and smoking and hanging out with their kind of long legs draped over the banister of the stairwell, I thought they're all dealing with this level of violence and sort of physical intrusion, and they're much better at it and braver than I am. And it never occurred to me to tell them that this was happening.
That's a curious way you said that, Jessica. So you were, just to make sure I understood it, you said you were, 16 and there were older girls like 17, 18, 19?
No,
Or
in their
even,
20s, in their
20s.
mid-20s. Yeah.
So were they being abused, or was it consensual because they were of age, or do you feel like there was just a power dynamic? I wasn't quite sure what you meant.
Thank you. There is a power dynamic in a dance company because there's sort of the master, the choreographer, the ballet master, interesting words, master, and he was in charge of everything, and you were completely compelled by him, and you were completely sort of acquiescent to anything he said, because it was sort of move to the right, do that pirouette faster, can you do the elevée, in front of the boy. And there was so much physical contact with the men. And so it's very hard to distinguish what was okay and what wasn't okay.
I understand that. That's much. Thank you for going into that better. And,
Of course.
I feel like that's been a theme we've been talking about is, so many of these sports where women were allowed, like some of the earlier sports where we were, like ballet, for example, or gymnastics, where, there were a lot more women, but the coaches were the ones that were doing the abuse. And it was, a very refined and intense kind of athleticism and more one-on-one, right? Like,
Right.
gymnasts aren't they are a team, and ballet works as a team, but really it's still also a lot of intimate one-on-one kinds of opportunities. So I'm glad we're talking about this, Jessica. I'm sad that it's
I
like
am too.
new,
Thank you.
but
And just to jump in with one
yeah.
observation about that world, there was a point as I got, older and better as a dancer. But again, I was, this all happened the year I was 16, when the ballet master choreographed a dance for me and this man. And in the dance, we were he was supposed to hit me and pretend to hit me, and I was supposed to back off. And then, take little steps towards him again, and then he would pretend to swing at me, and then I would duck, and it was all choreographed.
Oh my gosh, that's
And
like a
one
dance
thing,
of abuse.
it's a dance of abuse and distress. And one thing I came to think a lot about afterwards was that my parents and my brothers were in the audience. And so they saw this. And it's always been odd to me that they never kind of wondered why this was the dance of distress that I was trapped in with this man.
Right. You had one brother. I was going to ask about that. You have one brother and
I have two brothers, and I'm in the middle.
And then no other sisters.
Yeah.
Okay. And then your parents were still married all the time, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. My parents, I think, had one of those marriages that so many people did in that moment, where they were kind of living entirely separate lives. And my dad he was a physician. He was very dominant in the household and even physically violent with us. And again, so I was sort of brought up with the language of, volatility. And I really think that had something to do with what happened.
I think that has a lot to do with what happened. I'm glad you mentioned that too. I think it's worth spending a minute more on that too.
If you can spend a minute on anything, I'm all in.
So our listeners don't know what year this would have been. So this would have been, you were growing up in the late 50s, early 60s?
No, I was growing up in the 60s.
In the 60s.
Oh, well, the 70s.
So you were
I
16
graduated
in the 70s, right?
Yeah, I graduated in 77 from high school.
Okay, gotcha. So you're a teenager in the early 70s, and this is the climate that, we are getting out of Vietnam, and right. So we have contacts. We're coming out of the 50s and 60s. Kind of the revolution. Did your parents participate in? Because that was just north of New York. Was all the rebellious, the 60s, and
they were very conventional.
Okay,
I'm Jewish, and at that moment, if you were Jewish, at least where I grew up, you tried not to make waves.
Oh, gotcha.
And to be noticed. And I can remember being invited to birthday parties at clubs, athletic, social clubs that wouldn't allow Jews. Oh. And so I would be invited to somebody's skating party, but I couldn't go. Or I would go to a sleepover, and the mom would be making breakfast, and she would be making bacon. And then she would say to me, "I know your people don't eat bacon." And so I was a very secularized, assimilated Jew, but there were these kind of weird moments when I was sort of categorized in a way that really didn't make sense to me as a child.
And that gives another layer to all the oppression.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. And the complexities of silence. I think, sexual violence overlaps and intersects with a lot of, marginalization and abuse in lots of ways. And then it's compounded, as you're describing, by now we're talking about cultural, the age of where men and women were in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
And then the layering of being Jewish at that time and ongoing. I'm curious about the ballet then. Was the ballet more inclusive in any way?
I think it was. Mm-hmm. And that's
so it was
part of
a
what appealed to me.
For you?
Yeah, it was definitely a respite. It was quiet. even with the beautiful, it had beautiful classical music.
Mm-hmm.
You were moving in sync with other people to make something beautiful.
And I'm thinking, because the way you just described your family life at home was volatile and unpredictable with your father's, like,
Right.
he could explode at any time, it sounds like.
Yes.
And
and he did.
And the way to cope as a child with that is go find order and discipline and a safe, calm.
Yes.
And books and ballet sound good.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Like books,
That's exactly
books aren't
right.
going to be unpredictable. The words are already
Yes.
done. Nothing's
Yeah.
going to jump
And
out.
it's such a safe refuge. And it's such
Right.
an interesting world. Because
Yeah.
if you live a very sheltered life, there are so many other worlds that you have access to if you love to read. And that also really saved me, I think.
Right.
But yeah.
And then
I ended up.
you go ahead.
Go on.
And
I'm
I was going to say
sorry.
one more thing
No.
before you go on about
Yeah,
the
of
other thing I
course.
was thinking about the ballet is you mentioned is a physical touch modality,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes.
and it's it's between men and women. So
Yes.
I also think that's an interesting, it's supposed to be very, as you said, choreographed, but it's ironic that the choreographing was back into abuse, right?
Yes.
Not respect or honoring or like, all those good boundaries, but really a whole separate storyline of physical assault is what you described.
Yes, exactly. And you could never ask questions. So you could never say something hurt, something was uncomfortable. You were totally silent, which is an echo, if you will, from my life in my household. Because whenever I would say something wasn't working for me, either I would be met by violence from my dad or, complete silence from my mom. And so you could never speak up and say if you were frightened, if something was happening in your outside life that didn't feel right. There was no person in my family, even though this man, as we got more and more involved, he ended up coming to my family's house at night. And there was a little door to the bathroom near to me that led outside, and he would just pound on the door, and I would let him in, and he would assault me in my bed. But no one in my family ever seemed to notice, even though he was in the house.
Like they didn't even know he was there, or they pretended not to?
That for me is the crux of my journey. Who knew and didn't do anything, and who didn't know? And much later in my late 20s, I did tell my mom that it had happened. And she said, "You were so secretive. You must not have wanted us to know." And so there was never any even inquiry into what it was, let alone any sense of responsibility for what happened. And after I had my younger daughter,
do you think
think
your mom's comment was more about did you feel blamed by it? Do you feel like she was just hiding her head in the sand because she's dealing with her own stuff? Do you think
yes
to both?
Yes to all of the above.
Okay.
I think so. But what's meaningful to me is that I once again broached it in my late 30s in a setting. We were sitting in my daughter's bedroom. It was kind of a wonderful place and a terrible place to talk about it because so much of it had taken place in bedrooms, his bedroom and my childhood bedroom. And I told her, and I said, "Don't you feel sad that your child, your only daughter, has suffered, and it misshaped, if you will, my whole life?" And she said, "I don't feel any guilt about it. I don't feel any responsibility for it. We didn't know. Back then, people didn't know." And I said, "Well, now that you know, what do you feel about it?" And she said again, "I don't feel anything. I don't feel guilt. I don't feel shame. It happened and you clearly didn't want us to know." And that was the end of the conversation and the end of ever speaking to her about it.
Did you
or
ever
really
talk to your
anything
dad?
intimate. No,
No.
my dad was not that guy.
And your brothers?
My brothers never said anything if they knew. Again, I don't know who knew, but my mom died several months ago, and my brothers told everyone who knew me in the extended family not to tell me, and they wouldn't let me go to her funeral. And when I published my book, the night actually of my first book event and the book, party that my mom was very involved with, she canceled that. No one came to the first book event, and they never spoke to me again. So not only did she, create this terrible rupture, but everybody followed, my brothers, their families, and I had been very close to everyone, especially my nieces and nephews. And I never spoke to them again. So there was no reconciliation with my mom when she passed.
That's hard. And your dad, I assume, as well, he has passed?
He passed, and I don't think he had the slightest glimmer of who I was. And he didn't have time for that.
Well, if we talk more, let's go back to this 27-year-old. And how long you said 16. And
16,
how long
yeah.
did you graduate from high school and go to college?
Yes, but at some point I thought he would kill me, and not necessarily intentionally, but the violence just escalated, and it was, he would shove me against the bedpost, and he would, pummel me. And so I knew I had to get away just to save my life. And I convinced my parents to send me to France as a high school junior on a program for college juniors. And I'd never been on an airplane by myself before. And I went because I thought this is the only way out.
And one thing I forgot to ask, you lived, this was in outside of New York City, and where was the ballet that you were in?
It was right there locally, but we danced all over New York State, and we had professional dancers from New York City Ballet or American Ballet Theater who would join the company for these performances. So you had a lot of exposure to kind of the best ballet dancers of the day.
And then, so you was the trip to France, was it a scholarship so you could just go?
No,
gosh.
They paid for me, and they never asked questions because that would have been a perfect opportunity for me to say, I really want to stay. I really want to graduate from high school. I really, I don't want to go anywhere. But I kind of felt like if I didn't do something, something terrible would happen.
And how did you, I'm curious when if and how you told this 27-year-old that you were leaving, because you were frightened.
Yeah. He had several times I had said, you're much older, you're hurting me. I could tell my parents, even though I'm not sure now what my parents would have felt about it or done about it. And he would say, if you do, I'll kill you. So I eventually left. I actually don't know what he felt about it, my departure, but I did see him many years later when I was in New York. And I asked him, why did you do it? And do you know that it's, had impact on my life and kept me from doing a lot of things I probably would have been braver about? And he said his father had beaten him too. And he now had a stepson who was, in his early teens, and he was beating him. So, it was kind of the typical cycle of violence that no one had broken. But I, struggled with it for many, many years. I think if you've been the victim of violence, it's kind of a depth charge that continues to detonate. And you do, I think, spend your life negotiating it, not at every moment. But it was only when I had children and I realized how much those feelings of fear were dominating my life and therefore their lives. That's kind of when I was first able to confront it.
When you had children. And how old were your
When I had
children when they got to be about 16 or before?
Yes.
Is
When my older daughter was almost exactly the age I was when the abuse started, I realized that I was treating her, protecting her, worrying about her in ways that were completely inappropriate to her own life, because the world was safe for her. And she did have much better instincts for moments when maybe she wasn't safe. And I literally hid in the bushes as she went to ballet school to watch her get off the bus. I was so frightened that something bad would happen to her.
And how did you tell her about your story?
Over the years, as she got older and it was more appropriate, I told her bits and pieces. But when I published my book, I left it on the stairwell, because I have found, like other children, she would invariably read something that was sort of just laying around, and she picked it up and she read it in one sitting, and I think she understood. And actually, both my daughters, when my mom left the world without saying goodbye or reconciling in any way, although I tried in so many ways to do that over so many years, both my daughters called me individually and said, "We will never let that happen with us." And I was so moved by that.
That's amazing. That's so powerful. That's at least some healing, right, Jessica?
Yeah, there's a lot of healing, as there is for me, because I think when you have love and wonderful friends and incredibly supportive partner and work that matters to you, and for me, in a way, most of all, having my daughters, because the Buddhists say that your children choose you to teach you. And I felt they did, and that one of the lessons they wanted to teach me was about freedom. And so I definitely feel like I'm someone who's sort of passed through the crucible of incredible violence and betrayal, but I don't live there every day.
Well,
let's.
I want to come back to more of that part, but maybe we'll get pieces of how you are where you are now. So you were in France for how long?
I was in France for half the year for one high school semester, and then I came back. I never had contact with this person.
Did you stop doing ballet when you came back?
I had to, because when you're a serious dancer, they make you choose kind of after high school, are you going to go to college or are you going to keep dancing and not have any further education? And I knew that I wanted to write, and I wanted to read, and I wanted to be in a setting with other people who really cared about those things. So it wasn't a choice for me. It meant so much to me to find a place where I really belonged.
You mean college?
Yeah, but I had really not a very good education, but I enrolled in this program that was a very small group of kids who went from discipline to discipline, all staying together as a group. And it was called Directed Studies, but we called it Demented Studies because it was crazy. It was so hard. But I found my people there.
And what was Directed Studies? Is it a substitute, then not college? Is it like...
No, it's a program within the college.
Within which
for
college?
People who want... within Yale. I went to Yale.
You missed that part, Jessica.
Yeah, I know. It meant so much to me.
Okay, so you went to
but I've been instructed
Yale.
not to talk about it very much. And so within Yale there was a freshman program in which you went with this small group of people from philosophy to history and politics to literature, and you started at the very beginning with the Greeks and the Romans, and so you got a real foundation in where these ideas came from, and that was just exhilarating for me.
Okay, so that sounds great.
It was great.
You took a deep dive. You did all academia.
Yeah, I
and you
did.
found your people.
But I found my people.
And then you said, but
I continued. Yeah, I continued to seek out volatile relationships with men. And
did you say, I'm going to go out with all bad men in your mind?
No, but they seemed to find me.
Okay, there's a difference between making an admission.
Right.
And,
No.
Okay.
I think they were perfectly, nice boys who played hockey or, I don't know, lots of things that meant a lot to them. But I would try and provoke in them a kind of violent response to me, because that was the only way I knew.
Okay, describe that. That's a big statement, Jessica. Explain
it is
that.
Big,
Explain
I know.
that. Go
it's
back.
Big.
Now you sound like the evil temptress. We've made you into the
I don't
wicked
think of
witch.
myself as a temptress.
Okay, well,
I think of myself.
That's okay.
I was a person.
I'm just asking.
Yes. Tell me your question.
Yeah,
because
I think that was fantastic, because I'm like, okay, we're getting the whole picture of how you
here's
now.
the whole picture.
So you provoked you. So give me some examples of what, I'm sure our listeners, some were like, this is what I want to do. I want to see if I can get the badness out of, tempts men to be their worst selves, to see if they can hold themselves together. I don't know, describe what that means.
Yeah, no, that's right. But I think when you're dealing with a 19-year-old, he doesn't really hold himself together a lot of the time. And so I would go on dates with these guys, but they would drink, I would never drink. And then by the end of the evening, I was lying in an alley with broken glass from various beer bottles and kind of drawing this person on top of me and, trying to compel him to act in a way that was violent, not with the violence that I had experienced as a 16-year-old. But I was definitely provoking people.
And
I didn't know how to have.
Were they too drunk to know what you were doing, or would they
think so. But there was always
to have sex?
There was.
There's a lot. What happened?
Yeah, no, there's a lot there. There was always a lot of shame afterwards. So I would see them in the. Well, all of the above. Mm-hmm. I think I would see them on campus. I would see them in the dining hall, and they never could make contact with me afterwards.
So you were having one night stands, and this must have been the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, but I wasn't actually having sex with these people.
Okay.
I was just no.
Making
I was
out?
kind of rolling around in the glass. Yeah.
Rolling around in the
making
glass.
out. Yeah, groping, grappling. This is my story.
I know. This is amazing.
And like every survivor, it's remarkable that I'm here and that
it's
I'm
incredible.
intact.
I'm thinking of all the things that could have happened to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It sounds, like the Stanford case with she was, near a dumpster.
Yeah. She's
with broken
a very
glass.
brave person.
So and this is night after night. It's
it was mostly weekends because, I was living like I did in high school, this kind of shadow life, this second life, where I was working so hard at my classes and, really wanting to, be good at that. But at night, I would put something very skimpy on, and I would go to these bars, never picking up older guys, and really never picking up anyone. But they would express interest in me at parties, at dances, and then inevitably, we would end up in this situation on a park bench, in an alleyway. And if ever it happened in their bedroom, never mine. At a certain point, I would become terrified and I would run, kind of screaming out into the night, and I would race across the Yale campus. There were campus police then, as there should have been. And it was an entirely separate life from my kind of daylight life. And I had learned to be very comfortable in the gaps between two lives because that's how I lived from the beginning of the abuse. I had that life with him that no one knew about. And then I was, a person at school who was doing well and, an editor on the paper and no one ever suspected that these two lives didn't meet.
Wow. That was amazing, that story, or that piece of your life. I'm just thinking about where those guys now, right? They're in their 60s.
I don't know. I don't know.
What
And I
they're
just have,
thinking. I hope they're not on the
they're not thinking about
right.
me.
I hope they're not on the Supreme Court or on some.
Yeah. Let's hope not. Supreme Court is not doing a very good job
Right.
of protecting women and people of color. And
Yeah.
but yeah.
So do you? I guess when you went through this phase, and were making these choices, it seems like you were okay with it at the time and navigating, and it felt. What did it feel like? Like I'm sticking in the mud that I want to be in right now, or am I trying to
don't think
break it? Like,
yeah.
were you trying to break the cycle, or what do you think?
I didn't even know I was in a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I was totally tuned out. I was totally unaware. And again, I think like a lot of survivors, the only way I got through all of the violence in high school was to become disembodied.
Mm-hmm.
And I would watch this man moving over me, and I was sort of floating on the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel like me. And one of the biggest challenges as I've gotten older and I've gotten into more committed and loving relationships is kind of reconnecting with my physical self, because I was so divided that it took me many, many years to find my way back. And that's still the case sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I have trouble living in my body, and therefore I have trouble feeling safe in the world, because I think if I felt grounded in my body, I would feel what we all need to feel, which is I'm bigger than anything that can happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to go through the world with a sense of competence and even optimism.
That's beautifully said, Jessica. I love that part. I'm still curious. I want to get to it feels like then you graduate from Yale, and do you have a job? Because there's still a lot of years to progress to where you are. So how does that look after Yale for you? Do you?
So I applied for scholarships,
Mm-hmm.
and I won several scholarships to go overseas. And the one I wanted most was a Rhodes scholarship. And I went to Oxford for 2 years. And I think that was really the first time I had friends. I belonged to a group of people, and I had the consolations of belonging. I trusted them. I had fun with them. I could go to them and talk about anything, including something that was troubling me. And that was the first time, I really felt
the directed studies program, that group of friends sounds like maybe they were more your academic friends, and you had still this social, different separation. And now at Rhodes Scholar, you have the connective tissue of the social and the academic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So over in Oxford, you're not doing the broken glass alley routine.
No. Although,
okay.
Or I was
sometimes?
Still totally,
Occasionally.
Or sometimes, exactly. But British men are much less likely to, well, they probably are. I think about all the men in England who've been recently.
Well, there's been some problematic men over there named.
Yeah. And that's a big question for me. Someone recently asked me this. After you go through experiences like ours, if I may, how do you ever reconnect to someone and trust someone? And that's been a project for me. And my husband, we just celebrated 35 years of marriage.
Okay.
So we've definitely hung in there with each other. But he was the first person when I had these, what a neurologist called abreactions, which maybe were a result of being beaten and hit on the head and stuff. In the depth of a sexual encounter, I would have these moments where I would get up and start crying and leave, and race out of wherever I was. And my husband was the first person with whom I could see the impact of that. I saw what it meant to him and how frightened he was and concerned.
Wow.
And that was sort of the moment when I thought, maybe this is my person.
That's perfect,
Because,
Jessica.
yeah,
So wait. Tell us. Yeah, go ahead. He's what?
yes,
He's what?
he's a very strong man
Mm-hmm.
and very rational, which as a writer and artist, I'm not always very reasonable in my responses to things. And he's just like everybody feels this about him. He's a deeply grounded, deeply moral, deeply sensitive and responsive person.
And where did you
And
procure this person?
where did I secure this man? I was introduced to him by a friend back when people were really doing that. And
Not
I
on
was
an app.
45. Yeah, what's
Not
that?
on
Not
an
on an
app.
app. There were no apps.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
You were
But
35?
I was 45 minutes
Oh,
late.
45 minutes late for the date.
Yeah. So for the date,
That's
we
a
always
lot.
joke about it now. What?
That's a lot.
That's
That's
a
a
lot.
lot of dates.
It's a
Unless
lot.
you're in New York City and stuck in traffic.
Yes, where you're in traffic.
Yeah.
I was stuck in fear. And the fear that someone who seemed really like he could be the right person for me would kind of figure out who I really was. And in this first date, it was back when there were kind of crayons on the paper tablecloth. I was so nervous that I made pictures of everything he told me. 63 steps to where he lived. He hoped to have a cat. And I drew all of it on this tablecloth because I had trouble just meeting his eyes. And unbeknownst to me, after I left, he saved that tablecloth.
Oh.
And we still have it. And I recently found it. We're unpacking because we were evacuated by the LA fires. And I unpacked it and I sent a photo of it to both of our daughters. Because,
That's lovely.
it's so meaningful to me because later that week, I was turning 30. He took this, tablecloth and he made it into a birthday card and he sent it to me, even though we hadn't been dating, more than that one date.
Mm-hmm.
And it said XXX, which I thought meant
Sex?
love or kisses. And I was like, wow, this is going well. But it just meant 30.
Oh.
And so I reached
I was
out to
going to say
him.
maybe it was X-rated,
Yeah.
triple
Yeah,
X-rated.
no, that didn't happen yet.
Okay.
But that's still a joke between us, that I thought it was kisses and he meant 30. And in our wedding bands, they're inscribed with these 3 X's.
That's beautiful. But
so
when you're 29, dating him now, where were you? You were not at Yale anymore? Were you out in California?
No.
Were you?
I was in California by then.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Yale. I went to Oxford on this scholarship. And I would say that the Rhodes Scholarship and Oxford were very sort of unwelcoming to women. The Rhodes Scholarship had been all male until 3 years before. And the college I lived in, which was beautiful and wonderful, had been all male for 800 years.
Oh my goodness.
And so there was no accommodation for women. You would walk to a fancy dinner that was being held by the heads of departments in this college, and you would have to walk across these boards that your heels would get stuck in. And it was just a metaphor they were totally unaware of what women needed to feel at home and safe.
And that's not surprising.
Yeah.
Anytime integration of any kind happens, it's always tough for the one coming in. No one has tested the grounds until we're there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. We are the test case.
We're the test.
But you are done with Oxford after 2 years and then you head to California right from England?
Then I head to California. I was very interested in theater and I went to theater all the time when I was at Oxford. And one of my friends there, her parents were involved with a theater in LA and I'd never been to LA. And they offered me a scholarship for 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've been here for, 100 years. And I once heard somebody say that in California, in LA, you can fall asleep next to the pool and you can wake up 40 years later. And I kind of feel that happened to me a little bit. But I had my children here. I met my husband here. I worked in the theater for 10 years. And then I won a grant from the American Film Institute to write and direct a movie. And then I kind of transitioned into having my girls, and I was very, very involved in their lives. And I ended up writing a book with a friend about raising kids in this unusual program that we were in with our daughters. And it was a very peaceful way to transition back into work, because my friend and I would sit on the floor and write, and our daughters, who were the exact same age, would be downstairs having, spaghetti together or working on crafts. And it was kind of a perfect way to meld motherhood and writing.
Wonderful. I know. I just realized we're almost out of time, Jessica. So let's.
Oh, no.
It's good. We got in so much.
You'll have to invite me back.
We will do more. But I just wanted to make sure. Last 1 or 2 healing tips, and then let's. Where can we find the book, the new memoir, or the
book?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. The book is in bookstores everywhere.
Okay.
And on Amazon.
Okay.
And it tells the story of my journey from this secret life, if you will, into the sun.
Gotcha.
And how I was able to meet my family there.
Perfect. So that will fill in all the gaps if we want to deeper dive.
Good.
And then 2 healing tips for our listeners, 2 favorite things that you think really pushed you. You already described, I think that date with your husband to be sounds pretty magical. Is there anything else on a day-to-day basis that, you've talked about ongoing struggle, which I think is really helpful. It makes us not feel like we're ever done. This is not, we're over it. It's like we're always processing it. And thank you for also sharing the vulnerabilities of the ongoing struggle. I think many of us have with, body, heart, mind connection and feeling good in our skin when our bodies have been so turned into objects, right? Not objects, not owned, controlled, or operated by ourselves, ironically.
Yeah, and more than turned into objects, our bodies have been brutalized.
Right.
And
Much
the only
better.
way to escape that pain, is to escape your body.
Right. So what are you doing to help our listeners, just those 2 things?
I would say 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, don't be afraid to walk through the pain and the experiences to the other side, because there is light and there is love and there is meaningful work and people around you who will really cherish you. And I think with any kind of trauma, people tend to put it to the side or bury it in some way, and I'll deal with that. And I feel like the only way to deal with it is through. And I didn't know that for a very long time. The other thing I would say is, for a long time, I volunteered at a school on Skid Row for kids who were unhoused, and many didn't have parents. And the first day I went, I sat on the floor with the kids and talked to them about writing memoirs, even though they were 8 and 9 years old. And above me was a sign with a quote from Dr. King that said, "The only question is, what are you doing for other people?" And I think this is a great balm and consolation. And I think helping other people, whether other victims or people who have suffered other kinds of trauma, that's also the way out, because it's the way to use what happened to you to help somebody else.
Beautifully said, Jessica. Beautiful. I feel like we just when I started out, I said the roller coaster. I had no idea you would take us on another roller coaster ride. We got the double loop.
I hope you felt safe on that roller coaster.
I felt great. I was like, this is amazing. Your life is
I
incredible.
think you're wonderful.
I love it. I love how zesty and passionate and open. Like I think you tell us who you are, and I love it. And I hope our listeners. My goodness, Jessica was so much fun to talk with, and just really
Thank
you.
you.
With like all the things she said. I mean, like you can be all those things. You can be everything she mentioned. She's owning that sexy outfit and owning everything she did.
Not really
and
anymore.
owning her writing and the stewardship and the helping and like all the beautiful pieces of you. So I say to our listeners, like everyone is incredible. You just can't get stuck. And I like what you said, which is don't get stuck. Go do more stuff.
Do more stuff and trust people.
Mm-hmm.
Trust people and know that whatever happens, you'll be safe because you can get out of it.
You also mentioned you found your people too. So I think that we can all go out and find people if we're not too stuck. So just know there are lots of people. We don't have to sit on a screen. There, people are out there.
So, and also, Katie, if I may, there may be moments when you are doom scrolling through your phone because you can't get out of the you can't get off the couch, you can't get out of the house, and I think that's okay too. It's all okay.
It is okay. And for our listeners, thank you for keeping on this journey with the journal, I hope. And until we see you again next week, self-care is everything. And together we are thriving and surviving. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Dear Katie. These conversations are never easy, but they're always necessary. And we're so grateful you chose to share this space with us. If something in today's episode stirred something within you, please give yourself what you need. Whether that's rest, support, or just a deep breath, you're not alone. To hear more stories, resources, and survivor-centered conversations, be sure to subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We want to hear from you, so please leave us a review and share your feedback. Your thoughts help us create episodes that resonate with listeners. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.